We'll start with the OSU-Miami game. Ohio State's quarterback's not very good, Sam. 4 for 18, 35 yards, and a pick. Is Ohio State going to be able to find a solution at quarterback?
Well, not right away, because Braxton Miller's a freshman, and he provided some glimpses of his ability. He's a good runner, but he fumbled 3 times. He fumbled 2 snaps, and he fumbled on a scramble. So Joe Bauserman's not the answer. You can't go 2 for 13 against Miami, who lost to Maryland because Maryland threw for 350 yards. Maryland's not a tremendous team, and Ohio State wasn't able to capitalize through the air. They're still going to stay in it because of their defense. They still have a solid defense, but that quarterback play is going to sink them.
Absolutely, and also Miami really dominated on the ground, which you don't see against Ohio State a lot. 2 backs combining for over 225 yards. Ohio State on both sides of the ball just weren't looking good.
I would say that Ohio State's defense was on the field a lot, though. They were on the field for around 40 minutes in that game, so a lot more plays for Miami to run the ball on them.
I'll toss this one to you, Kevin. Decisive 24-6 loss against Miami. Didn't look very good against Toledo the week before. Buy or sell this Ohio State team being a contender for a Big Ten title this year?
I think you can definitely see them competing towards the top of their division. Definitely Wisconsin at the top, but besides them, probably next up is Ohio State. So if they can maybe get a fluky win against Wisconsin, you can definitely see them contending. But definitely Wisconsin first in that division. So I sell.
Now moving on to the Michigan State-Notre Dame game. Usually a very potent running attack for the Spartans. 23 carries, only got 29 yards off that. Is that going to be a problem against Big Ten opponents, Sam? I mean, especially considering the Spartan offensive line has a lot of new parts.
If you're looking at the Michigan State offensive line, you're just rubbing your hands together and grinning, because they have 3 guys who played defense last year playing for that offensive line for the first time. Fu Funati, and then Blake Treadwell, whose dad is now the coach at Miami of Ohio, and some other guy that I haven't even heard of. That's not good. If you haven't even heard of their linemen, that's not very good. They are not going to be able to run the ball on the likes of Wisconsin, Ohio State. They may stay in the Ohio State game because of the quarterbacks, but they're not going to be able to run the ball on anyone with that kind of offensive line. I'm really close to selling them, but I have to push, though. I have to push because they still have the best skill set in the Big Ten.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. Between the running backs, which really couldn't get it going in that Notre Dame game, and Cunningham outside, and then Kirk Cousins, a 5th-year senior, probably a first-team All-Big Tenner this year, you got to buy their chances in the Big Ten.
So, Sam, I'll toss this one to you. A lot of questionable decisions made on Saturday. D'Antonio electing to go for a fake field goal on 4th and goal. Kirk Cousins' interception at the end. A little wishy-washy. Do you think the Spartan team can contend for a Big Ten title?
Well, of course they can. And that fake field goal, Little Giants doesn't work twice. There was no sequel to Little Giants in the 90s, so Little Giants can't expect that to work twice. But the Big Ten, they're not in a great division. Nebraska's defense has not been very impressive, so Michigan State can find ways to move the ball on them. It's not like Michigan's defense is a world beater. And who else is in the division? Iowa. Illinois is in the division. Illinois looks pretty good. But Michigan State, they still have the guns to compete. That offensive line needs to find some answers, though.
And I think topping the list of my favorite Mark D'Antonio blunders had to be trying to sneak Le'Veon Bell out there on that fake field goal. Brian Kelly really outcoached him on Saturday. I think anyone who was watching that game saw it. And lastly, in this segment, guys, Iowa against Pittsburgh. Down 27-10 early in the 4th. The Hawkeyes really came back. I'll start with you, Kevin. What's your take on the Hawkeyes this far? Was that comeback impressive, or have they been kind of disappointing so far?
Iowa's really been up and down so far, and if not for 3 TDs by Vandenberg in the 4th quarter, they were not winning that game against Pitt. Pitt dominated the whole game until the 4th quarter. They seem to look a bit like Michigan against Notre Dame. So early, you really can't tell with Iowa, similar to a team like Michigan. You never know. Come the Big Ten season, they might start playing well, but I'm personally not very confident in Iowa going forward.
And I don't think anyone's pegging the Hawkeyes as a BCS-type contender this year, Sam. But do you think they can compete in that Legends division with the likes of Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, etc.?
Iowa's always the best coached team in the Big Ten. For Kirk Ferentz, well, now that Jim Tressel's gone, and I know Jim Tressel cheated and everything, but that's a different story. But Kirk Ferentz, he's a great coach. And so fundamentally, Iowa's always going to be there. They're always going to compete. But they've lost too much to really expect them to get to the Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. they were able to capitalize on Pitt's weak pass defense, 90th in the country, but they're not going to be able to capitalize on Michigan State's pass defense, which was strong against Notre Dame. They're not going to be able to capitalize on Michigan's pass defense or Illinois' revamped defense. That's 3 losses right there.
I would have to agree, Sam. I don't think this Iowa team's going to be very good at all. I did pick them to beat Michigan earlier on in the season. I think I'll end up going back on that prediction come November. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about 3 more teams in the Big Ten and their chances right after the break. Welcome back to Varsity Blue. David Nowes, Kevin Twill, and Sam Dodge. 3 more Big Ten teams to evaluate, rather. First of which, Penn State against Temple. Penn State did not look very good on Saturday, guys. We'll start about the quarterback situation. Matt McGloin, Rob Bolden sharing snaps, neither being particularly impressive on Saturday. Do you see either of them stepping up in the future, Sam? And is this 2-quarterback system sustainable if you want to win some games?
It's a very telling quote when Penn State's receivers were asked, what's your offense's identity? And they said, we don't have an identity. We don't know what we're doing out there. Penn State doesn't have the leadership in Matt McGloin or Rob Bolden to compete. And it's a similar problem to Ohio State, that without those quarterbacks, they're not going to go anywhere in the Big Ten. They don't have an aerial attack. They don't even really have a running attack. They just don't have an offense.
And Kevin, the Nittany Lions have an uphill battle being in the same division as Ohio State, Wisconsin, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think they can compete, or is this going to be a down year in Happy Valley?
No, they are definitely not going to compete. I see them more towards the bottom than the top of that division. They're going to be struggling against teams like Purdue and Indiana. Really, when you have Matt McGloin, 120 yards, 24 yards passing, splitting time, the best quarterback performance in the game against Temple, what are you going to do against Ohio State and Wisconsin? They're really going to struggle.
And speaking of a team that's kind of trending the other way, the Illinois Fighting Illini, playing Arizona State this weekend, another team that seems to be trending upward, but the Illini really looked good. They had the lead pretty much the entire way, lost it momentarily, regained it in the 4th with Nathan Shieldhouse's touchdown pass to A.J. Jenkins. But does this win prove anything for Ron Zook's team, Sam?
It proves that they're a Ron Zook team. They could be, that's a simple answer, but they're a schizophrenic team because they can play so well at times. Nathan Shieldhouse can take it to the house, pardon the pun. Nathan Shieldhouse is a good quarterback, 71%. They have Jason Ford. They have a good offensive line, and their defense, which a lot of people thought was going to struggle because they lost 3 guys to the NFL, has really revamped. But it's Ron Zook's team, so you know they're going to lose a couple games that they shouldn't, like a Purdue or a Northwestern, or a game that they really shouldn't lose. Even they play Western. Western's not a bad team. They could lose to a team like Western. So I'm not sold on them, but I had a pretty low stock of them before, so I'm going to buy their stock this time.
Legends division for everyone at home. It's the M's, N's, and Iowa. So we got Minnesota, Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois is in the other division, rather. Sorry about that, folks. Do you think they can compete in that other division against the likes of Ohio State, Wisconsin, etc.?
Well, because it's a weak Big Ten, sure they can. They just need to not be have that Ron Zook schizophrenia about them. They have, we'll see how they play against a team like Western, who just beat the crap out of Central Michigan, 44-14. And you got to see how they play against other competition. They got to see how they play in trap games. And those are the games that are more telling to me than the games against Ohio State, than the games against Penn State, than the games that are really marquee games on their schedule.
I actually totally disagree with you, Sam. I think they can totally compete at the top of that division. You look at their talent, as opposed to Arizona State talent, who just beat Missouri last week. They are definitely a good team in the new Pac-12. And they can definitely beat Michigan. They have Michigan at home. And then between Ohio State and Wisconsin, if they win their Ohio State game, then it comes down to that Wisconsin game. And I could see them either finishing 2nd or 3rd in that division.
Seeing anything can happen in college football. One upset really could be the difference for this Illinois team. I think this is the 1 year in 4 or 5 that Ron Zook puts a good team on the field, gets to 9 games. They'll probably be in a New Year's Day bowl game, so I'm going to buy along with Kevin. Now, last team we'll talk about, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. 20-17 at halftime, really broke it open in the 3rd quarter. Did this weekend establish Nebraska as really that team to beat in the Big Ten? Start with you, Kevin.
Well, Bo Pelini As he said, he usually gets really upset when his defense gives up all those points like he did to Washington, but they were up really big at the beginning of the second half, and those points were really empty calorie points for Washington. And it was all about beating them down after they lost in the Holiday Bowl last year. And I think this was just a revenge game. And come Big Ten, I think that defense will get fixed, and they'll be playing well and looking for at the top of the Big Ten.
I agree. They're a Big Ten definitely contender. I don't think they're quite a national title contender, and that's what a lot of people pegged Nebraska to be. But they're definitely a Big Ten contender because their offense is more explosive than I think we thought they were going to be. Taylor Martinez has reverted to his former form, and that defense, it's a Bo Pelini. He's going to find a way to get the defense recombobulated, if you will. So I have confidence in Nebraska.
I will slightly disagree, Sam. I think that Nebraska is going to really take advantage of this weak conference this year. Even though they have a difficult conference schedule, I don't see that being a problem. I think they've got a chance to compete for a national title, especially if there's only one undefeated team. I think they could be that 11-1 team that slips in there with the difficult beginning to their Big Ten schedule.
And one last thing. Taylor Martinez is Denard, but even a little bit worse on the ground. I don't think he has much of an arm either. So, and if he gets hurt like he did last year, I think that'll lead to the demise towards the end of the Big Ten season.
They're not beating Wisconsin.
Time will tell. Time will tell. We'll switch gears a little bit now quickly, guys. Michigan playing San Diego State this upcoming weekend. We'll take a look at some of the stats on San Diego State. They're 3-0 this season. Not great competition, though. Wins over Cal Poly, at Army, and Washington State. The next 2 weeks, though, will really tell if San Diego State's for real. They've got number 22 Michigan and number 20 TCU. Really, the strength of this team is the running game. Ronnie Hillman, as you can see on your screen, putting up pretty big numbers. And that's where we'll start. Where does this Michigan defense need to do to keep this team in check, especially Ronnie Hillman on the ground?
Well, it's all about, it comes up front. Brady Hoke always stresses offensive and defensive line play. The trenches is where the trenches are, where Michigan is going to win this game. And it's not about holding Ronnie Hillman to 50 yards or 40 yards. He's going to get his yards. We've let other running backs get their yards. It's about not letting Ryan Lindley, the quarterback, their 6'7" quarterback, from going nuts. He doesn't really have any receivers to throw to, so if you don't have to commit too many resources to Ronnie Hillman to stop him, then I think Michigan is in a pretty comfortable place against San Diego State.
I agree with you. That San Diego State team is not what they were last year. They lost a couple big wideouts, and I don't think they can really pass the ball against Michigan's D through the air. And like you said, if they can commit as few guys as possible to the run game, they will really dominate this game.
I think their leading receiver has some kind of Eastern European name that nobody can pronounce. He's not the same guys as Vincent Brown, who's in the NFL right now.
Absolutely.
Well, Eastern European or not, the passing game hasn't been quite stellar for San Diego State yet so far this season. Now, moving to offense now, a lot of corrections seem to need to be made for this Wolverines team. How are they going to do it, Kevin?
Well, obviously, Denard is a good enough athlete to beat up on any middle competition, non-BCS competition, like a San Diego State, like an Eastern or Western. But you're going to want to see, like I mentioned earlier, Denard established the throwing game early, just so we get a little bit of hope going towards the Big Ten season that he can actually complete a couple balls when he needs to.
Well, you have to ask the question, does Michigan have more than Denard? Do you think Michigan has weapons outside of Denard? And I think if you watch the Notre Dame game, Junior Hemingway, Roy Roundtree, Jeremy Gallen, I think
Kevin
Koger, Fitz Toussaint. There are other players. And if you're playing San Diego State, if Denard is just being Denard and if he runs the offense, everyone knows we have Denard. So you don't need to show too much against San Diego State, or you would hope you don't have to show too much against San Diego State.
We've got about 30 seconds left, guys. In 2 sentences or less, what's your prediction on this game?
You can go first.
Well, I like a little more than what we saw against Eastern. San Diego State's going to put up a little bit of a fight. 28-14 Michigan.
24-14 based on flimsy evidence. It's a hard game to predict, but Brady Hoke has the knowledge of San Diego State last year. I feel confident.
I'll go 31-17. That's all the time we have for you today, guys. We'll be back next week, hopefully with another Michigan victory.